8:36 is our time on this Wednesday morning. Could get some snow between now and Thursday. We'll tell you all about it before we wrap things up here this morning. This is the Morning Drill. Joining us this morning, Crawford County Commissioner Jack Lynch. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good. Welcome to the program.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Good to see you.
Listen, we have a studio audience this morning.
Yeah, we do.
Nice. This is nice.
Intimidating.
It is intimidating. Big news, Mark reported this week, or was it last week?
It was actually taken last week, but we reported on the budget.
Because we're behind on things in the news cycle,
budget.
you know.
Right.
No tax increase for the county.
No tax increase for the county residents. That's correct. Moving forward into 2015.
All right. Now, with that said, you guys are still trying to find ways to bring in revenue, and I was very surprised to hear that the three of you got together and said, you know what? We're going to release a Christmas album and try to raise money selling the CDs.
Right.
And here's the commercial for that sort of the greatest Christmas hits collection that you guys are...
This is copyrighted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the revenues will come in and the royalties?
For the county, yes,
okay,
to the county. All right, so here's...
Disclaimer up front.
Here it is. Kind of like the three tenors. Here are the three commissioners.
In an effort to raise money for various projects in Crawford County, the Crawford County Commissioners took it upon themselves to form a musical group. This group is known as the Three Commissioners. The new group recorded a collection of reimagined Christmas tunes, inviting their friends and other taxpayers to join in on the recordings. The Three Commissioners proudly present A Crawford County Christmas. This 2-disc CD collection is filled with great holiday hits, like Francis Weeder's band singing the new Christmas classic, The Talon Building is Coming Down. Hey, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. The Talon Building's coming down. Yeah. Yeah, we're making a plan and checking it twice. At this point in time, it doesn't matter the price. The Talon Building's coming down. Commissioner C. Sherman Allen sings the classic Meade Ave Bridge.
Meade Ave Bridge. Meade Ave Bridge. Muscles are bound. Must come down. 80% is paid by the state. Yell if you must, but it's not for debate.
Commissioner Jack Lynch lends his velvet voice to a soon-to-be true Christmas treasure. What park is this?
What park is this you try to sell at a sheriff's sale that's not going well? Dead, there is so much that we want EPAC to take control.
This CD collection wouldn't be complete without the help of the Three Commissioners' friends, like this upbeat, fun tune for the holidays, featuring Mr. Young singing Up in the Courthouse. Up in the courthouse is Mr. Young. Oh, please, don't take away my gun. Come on, Jack, I just want my gun back, and you're not doing anything about it. And Mr. Alexitos performing the great holiday classic, You're a Mean One, Mr. Lynch.
You're a mean one, Mr. Lynch. You're all crooks. Get your hands off me. You're taking me away. You took my building. Now you're taking me.
42 holiday hits on this 2-disc collection. The Three Commissioners proudly present A Crawford County Christmas. Order your copy today.
So the proceeds for that collection will go right to the courthouse. I know, no comment.
We need a copy of that.
We figured it just got so serious with all this stuff, we needed to laugh at it a little bit.
Oh, man. I got to tell you guys, what a breath of fresh air.
This may be the last appearance by Mr. Lynch. No, you know, obviously we're having some fun there, but I do want to kind of reflect on this past year. We've been doing that a lot over the last couple of weeks with some of our guests. no tax increase for the county. There's been controversy with certain things. I shouldn't even say that word because these are things that continue to be brought up by a couple people, but it makes news. Sure. I want to get your thoughts. How would you describe this past year in your accomplishments? And not just yours, but obviously the other commissioners as well.
Sure. In terms of moving forward, let me just tell you that despite your intro piece, and I think that anybody that's at the county level or in local government would tell you that the cost drivers of government aren't just the commodities and the supplies and the things that you buy and that make your the paper clips and all of these things. It's three things really, and a couple of them are just emerging. One is your personnel costs. Anybody with a defined benefits plan is going to be struggling. The state is now. When you go to the CCAP and you sort of see what your peers are trying to achieve, it will continue to be a struggle. The second thing is moving forward, and it's sort of undefined, at least for large employers, of which the county is one, is your health care. It's ever emerging. So here's what I think that the last year has been, I think, particularly useful to talk about here today, despite it all, is the county over the last couple of years has made some significant structural changes from within. One of the things that we're trying to do in terms of a budgeting process that matters moving forward is to take a look, at least try to project out 36 months in terms of your capital needs. And not just this year or what you don't have from last year, but try to project out and work things into a budget on a gradual basis. I'll give you an example is the virtualization of our hardware. That's our computers and stuff. So moving forward, we're not going to be getting desktops and things of that nature. You'll have sort of you won't see anything different, but you'll have the same capacity at your desk, but you won't be buying a computer. We'll be moving to cloud-based systems and et cetera. Tim Kelly can give you the nuts and bolts of it, but that's a significant departure from where we've been, and just in terms of hardware. In terms of healthcare, as you may or may not know, we went to a different broker a couple of years ago. It was bid out for the first time in a couple of decades. And what we're seeing in that emerging set of circumstances that will define everybody's health care are things like spousal bumps, are things like looking from within and trying to put health and wellness on the table, because these kinds of things will be rewarded over time. Cessation programs, things the county has traditionally never been involved in, but makes a difference in terms of Big Blue and anybody else that's looking at your charts, your actuarial tables, and seeing what you're trying to do to contain healthcare costs moving forward. And I think the third thing is, in terms of our liability stance moving forward, is moving to PCOMP and trying to take that liability issue, which we were basically self-insured, and move into a group setting through the P Corp, through the CCAP, that puts the county on better footing moving forward. So those self-insured workers' comps and those kinds of things where you're putting money on every year and spending money almost on a per unit basis will now be more global in terms of moving forward. So these are the kinds of things that you take a look at, you try to assess what they mean, not just for the coming year, but moving down the line. And the other thing I would say, since you brought it up, is, and we just met yesterday, the county had, in government, and anybody that's in government can tell you this, there's basically two types of funds. There's your restricted accounts and there's your unrestricted accounts. Unrestricted accounts are things like in the county's case, your county money that comes in the door. It buys stuff you need, it pays for personnel costs, it does these kinds of things. Your restricted accounts, like your sinking funds and those things, are earmarked for specific purposes. In June of 2012, we identified about $13 million worth of restricted accounts that actually didn't need to be restricted, which means a lot in terms of your bottom line balancing your budget at the end of the year, but can actually be invested for a higher yield. So we'll be doing that in 2015 moving forward. Short term, long term, so we can have some monies to offset CBAs and those kinds of things in a budgeting scenario moving forward. One other thing, every year that anybody that's been in the county for more than a few years would tell you that in terms of your negotiations, every year there was a different unit that was negotiated, whether it's PSSU or SEIU. All of our negotiations will occur in 1 year. So in other words, there's no 1 year look back. So it'll be a fresh start, I think, from the union perspective as well as the management side of it, that everybody will be negotiated for a term moving forward in 1 year. So that's the first time that's happened, and that's not insignificant.
And these are some things that might not get a lot of attention because of some other topics, the renovation,
right,
talent, 2015 sounds like it's going to be a pretty big year. It sounds like you spent this year kind of setting everything up for the new year. Will there be a decision on what happens with the courthouse? I mean,
There has to be.
Okay.
Luke, we have a problem now. Just you can't get in the weeds on too much, but because it takes too long. But no.
And I saw pictures last week after the event at Cross Creek.
Did you?
We were looking at the pictures of the courthouse, and you were saying, "Okay, look here, this is somebody's office." What a mess!
It's phenomenal.
What a mess! I mean, the working conditions are just horrendous for some of those folks.
Here's the thing that's interesting, right? The user experience in the courthouse. So if you're coming in for, a marriage license or a DOE license, or to pay a tax or to get a passport, it works. I mean, it's a workable type of thing. In terms of the functionality of the courthouse, in terms of the ADA compliance of the courthouse, in terms of fire suppression at the courthouse, in terms of records retention at the courthouse, in terms of workflow at the courthouse, in terms of the courts, in terms of the separation of your plaintiffs and your defendants, and all of those kinds of things, it's interesting because we've limped along for decades. There's never really been a resolution on any one of those elements, much less all of them at one time. And just so that folks understand the cost drivers, that why we're all over town, why we're on the second floor of the Mercator's building with domestic relations, why we're in what was the Culbertson building with juvenile probation, why we're in the former law offices on John Holt Lane with adult probation, is because we've been out of space for years. The jail itself, the old jail that sits just adjacent, just east of the courthouse, that's an empty building that's environmentally compromised. That needs to come down. We'll be heating it all winter. The per square foot cost just to have that structure there is phenomenal. The physical plant in the courthouse has not been upgraded since really it was built. And the other thing that is a big deal is that if you go into the courthouse, now we did 2 years ago, we did the exterior, we did the repointing, put a new roof on, put a new cupola on, because it was falling off the top of the, it's supported with structural steel, but the facade was just rotting away. Those things I think are understood by people because it's visceral. You can see the exterior. You can see that there's something wrong up there on the cupola, for example. In fact, little pieces of wood were sharding off, and little pieces. And so people understood that we needed to upgrade that. You need a roof. No roof, no home, as was pointed out many times by folks much wiser than me. But I think that the user experience doesn't really tell the story of the behind the scenes in the courthouse.
You guys were sort of handed this mess. I mean, this has been 50 years of neglect almost on this building.
It's hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to say. I can tell you that historically, right, when the county had a problem that was essentially a court-related expanse. I mean, when the courthouse was redone in the 50s, there was one probation officer. To put it in some context, there's 27, I believe, now full-time probation officers. Their caseloads are full. Juvenile, the same kind of thing. Domestic relations, the same kind of thing. So really a lot of the expansion, that is to say personnel costs, going back to how we opened this up, is court-related.
Mark, we talked with Mr. Brooks, Dr. Brooks, the Venango County Commissioner last week, and he pointed out that all of their facilities are at the courthouse. He said it took him some years to get all that stuff together, but he said everything is so much more efficient having everything right there. Well, that says a lot, and that's something that you've been saying throughout the year. Hey, folks, if we can get everybody together,
yeah. I mean, in terms of functioning entity that's centrally located, people know where it's at. Venango County, of course, has an annex. Somerset County has an annex.
But everything's relatively close.
Relatively close. Manageable, in terms of cost containment moving forward. And one of the things that's true, and I've said it before, I think, on your show, Luke, there's a reason that the Forum building exists in Harrisburg. There's a reason that L&I exists in Harrisburg, the building I'm talking about. There's a reason that the Keystone office building, the Rachel Carson office building, and they're not all over town, is because it's one of the ways, despite it all, in terms of the different departments that populate these buildings and so forth, that the government can contain the costs on this, much less the user interface in terms of going to these places and understanding where things are in a practical sense. Look, I mean, where it makes sense for leasing, I'll give you a great example, is the Veterans Office, now is in the Meadville Mall. Accessibility, visibility, parking, The folks that typically use a lot of the many ways, the older folks had a difficult time getting into the courthouse because actually the handicap access is behind the building, off of John Holt Way up through and, in a wooden ramp to get down in the basement. Those kinds of things were prohibitive in terms of that gaining access. And Fred Cunningham will tell you that the usage of that facility has been phenomenal for them. I mean, it makes sense. It clearly makes sense to have that in a readily understood place with a bunch of parking and handicap accessible.
What do you think you're most proud of this past year?
I think it's a we thing. I think that we're most proud of one of the things that never gets any press, if you will, is the setup work. Is just so that the county folks know that watch this. 3 things about Crawford County. It's in a very good cash position. If you read the audit and we put it online, it's in a very good cash position. That's not everybody's case. So what that says is, and gives some credence to the guys that were there before, it's been managed very conservatively. One of the things that's, I think, true as you hold your millage down to present value is that looking forward, what do you do with that position? We've got a very good debt position. I mean, the county has very little debt. In spite of the BABs that were undertaken in 2010 for the courthouse renovations and the demolition of Talon, it's got 2 things going forward. It's got an emerging cost containment strategy in terms of your cost drivers, like we just discussed. It's got a good cash position. It's got a good debt position. So when we go, for example, and look at 6th-class counties or 5th-class counties in CCAP, clearly in the big picture, the county's in very good fiscal shape. And we said all along, if you can't do the money right, you can't do any of it right. So that, and when you talk about transparency, there are now policies in place that we didn't really have, that folks can question what's happening, and we can have an answer for it in terms of how we're proceeding and procedurally. I think that has got to be said because it's something that I think all of us are very proud of. And people understand it that work within. Trust your management.
Is that a hard message to get out to say, hey, folks, listen, you might be complaining about this, or you're just seeing the price tag on this project, but listen, this is how much we have. This is our debt. This is what we've been able to cut from the budget. We're financially okay.
We're financially okay. Is it hard to get out? Is that a hard? It
seems like that's a hard message to get out. And I don't know. Maybe just some of these outside distractions are big distractions. I mean, Connie Lake Park's a big thing. Mead Avenue Bridge, big thing.
I think it is. I think that, like anything, there are certain things that people are very interested in. Connie Lake Park, primarily amongst those. I mean, they're interested in that. It's visceral. I mean, it's one of those things that it's been around for a long time. At least there's some resolution that we can talk about that a little bit. But it is hard to get out. I think that the average person, will tell you, and they're absolutely correct, well, you should be doing those things, right? I mean, those are the things you ought to be doing. That's why we're paying you guys to be there. Those are the things that, at the end of the day, we care about. Most folks will look at Coney Lake Park or the Mead Avenue Bridge, excuse me, that's been closed since, 2007, and say, what's taking so long? What's taken so long with Coney Lake Park? And we can answer those questions, and a lot of them we're not in control of. I mean, there is a process that anybody that's watching this from PennDOT District 10 in Oil City will tell you that script, Luke, that we followed through it all, takes that long, and particularly when you've got a very unique water structure, which is French Creek, and a historically significant structure. And despite it all, the sponsor or the owner of that can't make that go any faster or any cheaper. So we finally got to that point. By the way, on the 102 side of the Mead Avenue Bridge, that work has begun. You may see a dismantling of that structure. There's an interested party that would like to take it, the Whipple inside of the Baltimore Trust, take it apart and relocate it because it's historically significant. But that work has begun. The Mead Avenue Bridge, there's an opportunity here that it'll be done perhaps in the fall of 2015, but certainly in the spring of 2016.
All right. So that's some big news.
That is big news.
Specifically talking Titusville, what have been some of the, dealings that you've had with Titusville in this past year?
Well, there's 2 things. You guys have in Titusville one of the best economic development platforms for a city its size in the state, bar none. There's no doubt about it. I think what Jim and his crew have done, and I'll talk about the interface here in a second, is take what has been on the ground historically with the top, evaluate the opportunities that, for example, shale and oil and gas present for all of us, really, and take it to another level with the shale plan. I think everybody needs to evaluate that for what it really can mean for Crawford County and Titusville specifically, and try to join efforts. Here's one of the things that we see us doing, and hopefully we'll have more discussion both this year and next year. Take the magnitude of that thing that could portend a lot for the city proper and the region, and join arms as you go through and you see what's happening in a more regional context. Because it's very real. We took a trip October 3rd to Beaver County. Several folks from Titusville were part of that, just to see what's happening on the ground and meet with county officials and county-related agencies to see how they're prepping for this proposed Dutch Royal Shell cracker plant. And what they'll tell you is, in terms of the potential magnitude, not just for Beaver County, but for the region, with all of the feedstock and all of the economic development efforts that are undergoing that could mean for plastics, for example. We're told that it's, in terms of the feedstock from the wet gas, is so compelling for our region. There's a reason that they're looking at this part of the country, that it could make a big difference for all of us in terms of our industrial efforts. And we met last week with individuals from Erie County. So the idea would be to work in the more regional context. There's things that the county has access to that, in terms of networking at the county level, giving credence to these efforts, both in Ohio. I mean, this is not something that stops at an imaginary line, but our job is here. So the idea would be we present that unified footprint. We go in together. We show a willingness to work together, to plan together, to work with our industry. And you've got something here that's very special. So our job would be to augment that, burnish what is happening here in the city, and try to provide some mutual opportunities, not just for the city, the region, and the county.
Collaboration seems to have been the name of the game for just about any effort that involves a municipality, local or county, even state. There's more that happens going forward when communities band together, it seems.
Well, because why? The potential magnitude, Mark, of what this could be if Jim or somebody, if we can go to Ohio next year to one of the Utica series. In those counties, we've gone to a couple of them, those counties that are in the southwest side, the Monroes and the all of those, I'm trying to think of the counties over there, Trumbull County and all of Meigs County, all of those counties, those are very poor counties. So what's happening is you have regional chambers of commerce. You have local government at the county level primarily, but also local economic development agencies, all presenting a unified front, working with the state to try to solve what? Problems. Because this presents a series of opportunity and a series of problems. So no one entity can figure that out. I mean, for example, the city of Titusville or the city of Meadville or Beaver Township isn't going to figure that out on their own. So that's the power of that collaborative effort, and to let both the entities that are engaged in oil and gas as well as a more regional audience know, look, we're working together.
Anything change with the changing governorship?
Well, you're on the transition team, right? We don't know. Look, a lot's been said. It was a compelling election cycle. What we do know is that Governor-elect Wolf does have his transition team in place. It's always interesting to look at because a lot of those transitional figures will be your leaders moving forward over the next term. The Commonwealth has challenges that many times our biggest concern is trickling down to the counties, because the 67 counties are essentially organs of state government. So we'll be watching that very closely. There was a lot of talk about the severance tax and Act 13 and how this is all going to work out. Frankly, nobody knows. We'll be watching that very closely. And he has to work, the governor-elect has to work with the Republican-controlled legislature, so that has to be work. We've got some new faces in our neck of the woods with, of course, Michelle Brooks, assuming Bob's leadership role, and Bob will be retiring here after a stellar career. So there's a lot of changes, and those state actors are very important. Our legislators are critical to make sure that our interests at the county, both locally and through the county, are represented in Harrisburg.
Crawford
we have
County,
a really good team.
Excellent. Crawford County Commissioner Jack Lynch, thank you so much for joining us, not only today, but thank all the commissioners for coming in.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to everybody. Luke, even you. I mean, you included.
Hey, and thank you for being such a good spirit.
Hey, listen, I just going to say something in 20. That was phenomenal. Look, if you can't step back and laugh out loud and don't take yourself just too seriously, that was phenomenal. How do we get a copy of that? Or is that?
Well, yeah, we'll work on that. Yeah, and that wasn't meant to be mean-spirited, but, Mark and I were talking, and if you just take a look from the outside, we're not ripping on anybody. It's just that's the situation that dominated the news. And
take a step back and take a laugh.
Yeah.
Look, thank you very much.
Hey,
all you do, both you guys.
Tell the other commissioners, Merry Christmas. Thank you so much again, and we look forward to continuing this into the new year.
You bet.
Alrighty. Mark, what'd you learn today?
Wow. I learned that Jack's a pretty good sport about what's in the news here.
Mr. Lynch, what'd you learn?
I learned two things. I learned that you're very talented when you want to be. Despite everything you hear.
Nothing from the peanut gallery.
Don't underestimate the east side of the county.
That's right.
Don't.
And you guys have a lot. I mean, when I say you guys, I mean the city specifically.
Me.
But you have a lot of good here. And if we work together, I mean, you're poised for even better things. You're opportunistic, you're hungry, and you're aggressive in a good way. That's not new news. But what is news is we went to the chamber mixer last week. There were several chambers involved. What a good time. And I mean, just sort of networking across county lines and getting to know some other folks. Good things. Good things can come from that.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television, Armstrong, and the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. Have a great Wednesday.